Welcome to another edition of CHP Talks. We are here today with Natalie Sonnen of Life Canada, and we're going to be talking about Bill C-7, where it's at and what we should be doing next. So, Rod, why don't you introduce our guest for today?
Yes, well, welcome, Natalie. Natalie Sonnen is the Executive Director of Life Canada. She has a wealth of experience in the pro-life movement, Bachelor of Arts and Liberal Arts from Thomas Aquinas College in California, a graduate business diploma in business management from Capilano University, a licentiate in social communications from the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross. And Natalie began her work in the pro-life movement in 2002 as the executive director of the Right to Life Association of Toronto. She later worked as the director of education for Signal Hill before taking on her role with Life Canada in 2009. So Natalie has spoken to audiences throughout Canada and the US on the life issues. I know she speaks to audiences across Canada because she's been up here before in Smithers, northern BC, speaking to our pro-life group up here. Her articles have appeared in the National Post, the BC Catholic, and the Catholic Register. She is the editor of Life Canada's Reflections magazine, an outstanding publication covering the life issues with depth and intelligence, and the creator of the Dying Healed program. She is also a Creighton Model Fertility Care Practitioner intern and has a wealth of knowledge in the area of women's health issues. She's married and has a daughter whom she enjoys homeschooling. Well, again, Natalie, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much, Peter and Rod. It's great to be here.
Well, we certainly appreciate you taking the time. And I wanted to ask you, how did you get started? This has obviously been a long journey in pro-life work. Where did it start, and what are some highlights that you've had over the years?
I think it actually started with my mom, if I can give her the credit. Just her approach to this particular issue, the issue of abortion, and how she taught me. And when I first heard about abortion, I dreamt about it that night, and I dreamt that I was holding a baby, a little baby that in my hands, and I was running out of the hospital trying to show people this child, and it was very disturbing, and it stuck with me my whole life. I was always very outspoken about it in high school. And then, later on, after I graduated from university, I taught high school for a while. And again, it came up in those instances. And I think finally I did that graduate business degree, and I was looking for work, and the thing that just really fell into my lap and just seemed to make a whole lot of sense was my initial start with Toronto Right to Life, where I became the executive director there. And I just, took to it. And so it's very much a passion, and I'm very blessed. I feel very honored to be able to work, in this particular movement. I think it's one of the greatest human rights issues of our day. So it really is a blessing to be able to do this work.
Thank you for doing that.
You now work for Life Canada, and I know that there's, you mentioned Right to Life, and we know there's many good pro-life organizations, each trying to do their part. Where does Life Canada fit into maybe the larger puzzle of pro-life organizations?
Yeah, this is a question that we get a lot. It does seem from the outside looking in that there's a lot of organizations, and we often get that, like, oh no, not another pro-life organization. But I think people need to understand that, like any successful army or if you're going to war, to use that analogy, it's not always I don't want us to think that we're from promoting violence or anything like that. It's just a good analogy when you think of, the strategy involved. You've got land, you've got air, you've got water, and we're doing the same thing in the pro-life movement. So we have we have the political arm of the pro-life movement. So that's one arm. We have the pastoral, which is helping women who are in need. And then we have the educational. And so we're the educational. So we're an umbrella organization. And we really work with our members across Canada. So people are very surprised to know that there's at least over 100 little community pro-life groups. And that's how I was up speaking for you, Rod, up in Smithers, as I was visiting Smithers Pro-Life Society. Kitimat has a little pro-life organization. And so they had me come in and speak to their high school kids. There was another Terrace BC has a Terrace Right to Life. So those organizations affiliate with Life Canada, and we act as the umbrella. And it's a loose affiliation, so they don't have to belong to us. But when they do, we can work together, and we'll roll out national campaigns. We'll make our programs available to them. When we do polling, the data gets released to them. Our campaigns are released to our groups, and we'll probably be doing a campaign. I shouldn't say probably. I know we're doing a campaign this year in 2021. And so we really rely on the local groups to roll out those campaigns, to take out the space, for the bus bench ads and the newspaper ads and the billboards and things like that. And we provide the design files, and we provide the professionalism, the marketing, and it really helps our member groups, and it lends a credibility to our movement that we can sort of be together as one voice under this umbrella. Yes, Rod.
Are you involved in the Guelph Right to Life bus campaign there? Are those ads something connected with Life Canada?
No, I don't believe so, unless they're using one of our older campaigns.
Okay.
So an older campaign that we ran was You'll Never Regret Loving This Much.
Okay.
And it had a young woman, she was 16 at the time, with her newborn. Mm-hmm. And so those were run across the country. We still see those billboards up. So I think they're up. I think there's a billboard still up in Smithers or Terrace, and I've seen them in BC as well. Up in Shuswap, they have one of those billboards. So sometimes we'll run a campaign, in 2012, and almost 10 years later, they're still using those materials in the community, and that's great. That's what we do.
Yeah. Well, the truth.
Well, it's not great because the issue hasn't gone away, but other than that,
that's
the work that's done continues. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the truth is still truth, and a powerful message, retains that truth, and not everybody has seen it. So people are saying for the first time 10 years later, it still has the same impact, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So you're talking about the educational part of what you're doing,
yes.
And that's what we want to talk a little bit about today in relation to Bill C-7. And so could you educate our audience about where Bill C-7 started and what it's trying to do, and where it's at now?
Yes, so Bill C-7 is very concerning. One of the things that we pointed out in our brief, so again, we represent all of our member groups and the individuals that they represent when we submit things like a brief to the government on these issues. So we submitted a brief on Bill C-7 pointing out that when euthanasia and assisted suicide was legalized in 2016, they promised that in 5 years they would have a review. Well, they're proposing now to remove the safeguards that they put in place in 2016. They're removing those safeguards now without having done that promised review. So it really is very, very concerning legislation. I'm going to just jump over to, I'm going to pull up, and I'll show this to you later, but what they have taken out of this bill. So it removes the requirement in law that a person's death be reasonably foreseeable. Okay, so it's taking that out. It permits a doctor or nurse practitioner to lethally inject a person who is not capable of consenting, on the basis that that person was previously approved for MAiD. Okay, so if you had previously signed that you want to die by MAiD, then they can, when you are incapable of consenting, take your life. And actually, in some cases, you could be resisting, and they can still do that. It waives the 10-day waiting period that a person is normally given when they are actually deemed terminally ill. So if you get a terminal diagnosis, they will waive the 10-day waiting period. So when you think about that, so first of all, your death doesn't have to be reasonably foreseeable, but if it is reasonably foreseeable, then your 10-day wait period is removed and you can have same-day death. So these are really, really concerning things. It reduces the number of independent witnesses from 2 down to 1, and the one witness can be a caregiver. And that means it can be somebody related to the person, and the caregiver can, we don't know, what kind of relationship this caregiver has with the person. Are they tired of giving care? Is this what it's about? We won't know. Bill C-7 permits anyone who believes that their physical or psychological suffering is intolerable to die by lethal injection, even if effective medical treatments for their condition exists after they wait. So they have a 90-day reflection period. So these are people with physical or psychological suffering. So they're not dying. They think their suffering is intolerable. Even if there are effective medical treatments, they can still, after 90 days, go ahead and have this kind of death on demand. One of the very concerning things is doctors saying 90 days. If you have somebody with physical or psychological suffering, sometimes just you wait more than 90 days to get in to see a specialist, to see somebody who can actually address these issues. So it's really not giving the medical profession the time that they need in order to work with their patients, to advocate for their patients, and to really fight for their patients' lives. So these are some of the things. They're very concerning. I know the physicians have across Canada signed this document called MAiD to MAD. And it's medical assistance in dying becomes medically administered death. And I think to date, there's nearly 1,000 physicians in Canada who've signed this, saying, what a devastating blow this is to their profession, and how for them they've witnessed their profession be dismantled and destroyed by lawmakers who really don't understand what it is they're grappling with as doctors. So it's very concerning. I don't think there's another piece of legislation like it anywhere else in the world. Just making people who are already vulnerable even more so, and really not allowing a fight for life. Physicians need to be able to advocate. They need time. They need to work with their patients. But if this easy way out is always sort of dangling there, and a patient can just opt for it, it really undermines what our physicians can do in this country. So,
yeah, that's one way of looking at it. Certainly, is that the physician side. I mean, I would think that mentally, it's already taken its toll on many doctors, just in terms of knowing that they could be working with a patient, seeing progress, but sort of knowing in the back of their mind, maybe they broached the subject once before, that next time they see them, they might be saying, maybe it's time for me to just end it, right? Like, what a discouraging thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess on the part of patients, what a temptation, to give up on life and not to fight for your own life. There's, we've all heard these stories of people who have terrible accidents and they wake up paralyzed, and they go through a very difficult period before they adjust to their new normal. And very often they will go on to lead very successful and happy lives that have more joy and happiness than perhaps they were previously living. It takes time to get there, and it takes a certain level of understanding of, what this is all about, and how this suffering is a part of my life and is actually going to better me as a human being. So it really undermines that for on the part of patients.
And of course, you mentioned the length of time that some of these patients will be waiting for regular medical care, and not for MAiD, but just for relief or therapy. And there's so little palliative care in Canada. And of course, I can't help mentioning that in BC right now, the one little 10-bed unit that has been providing wonderful palliative care, the Delta Hospice through Irene Thomas Hospice there, is now being shut down by the BC government but why wouldn't they, instead of focusing on that, why wouldn't they be spending more time trying to create better hospice care for those who need it, right?
Yeah, it's that to me is really when you think of our rights and freedoms as Canadians, if to run a corporation or a business or something the way we see fit, and this 10 bed, they don't want to do euthanasia, and suddenly the government swoops in and shuts them down. It's
steals their assets.
Very concerning. Yeah.
It goes from being a sort of at least it should raise the specter, I think, of this going from a possible option to a coerced, something that people are going to be coerced towards in the future, right?
Yeah.
The whole aspect of people not wanting to be a burden to their families, which would be a natural. Nobody wants to be a burden, right?
That's right.
But in the past, most families have said you're not a burden, and they're sincerely wanting to have that elderly person stay with them as long as possible. But I think as society gets used to things, we're getting used to a lot of things with the COVID stuff, but as society gets used to the idea that, when it gets tough, you just, take a pill or take a shot and you're done. Unfortunately, that concept of being made to feel like a burden may become more of a reality to many.
Yeah, that's a very good point. You touch on when I used to do a lot of high school presentations on euthanasia and abortion, and I always told the story of flying back from Poland. I'd been traveling around Europe, and the lady beside me went into cardiac arrest, and they laid her out on the floor, and they couldn't evacuate me because I was just right beside her. And she kept going in and out of consciousness. And when she would wake, she kept saying the same thing. And I always asked the kids, what do you think she was saying when she would come out of her, unconscious state? And the kids always, said, they would try and think of different things. No one ever guessed that what she would say was this. She said, I'm so sorry I'm causing so much trouble. That was the one thing she kept saying over and over again. I'm so sorry I'm causing so much trouble. And we don't realize that that's very often how the elderly, who are used to being functional and used to, living their lives independently, that is how they feel. And so they almost feel a duty to die. When we pull out the rug from under them and stop supporting their lives. And it's really an issue. We had my husband used to run tours to the Holy Land for a faith-based tour company, and we always had prayer intentions. And sometimes the prayer intentions were that I would have a quick death and not be a burden to my family. Yeah. So it really is something that I don't think our culture really realizes, how much that plays on the minds of vulnerable people in our society, and how devastating this legislation is for them.
Yeah, that's a very it's a sobering thought. I mean, we don't want to unnecessarily burden each other, but there's a time when it's actually a privilege, right, to care for someone who has cared for us, in the case of parents. And we've got to think about it that way. So what can we do about it at this point? The bill is in the Senate. So I want to tell everyone to talk to their local senator, but you don't have one. Right.
So unfortunately, it passed the House with no amendments. So the first stage of this was trying to get amendments to the bill and get protections, particularly conscience protections for physicians, so that they don't have to take part in this. So it passed the House, no amendments. It's now being discussed this week, the 1st, 2nd, 3rd of February, in the Senate committee. It will go to a vote in the Senate. We can contact our senators. Life Canada has a list of senators. We've actually, my office, our Director of Operations and Outreach painstakingly went through and picked up all the emails. So if you do want to email all the senators, you can contact us for that list. Otherwise, you can go to their website and you can pick out who you would like to communicate to. There are some senators who will certainly be very sympathetic to this. Others not so much. I'm not sure, if there's any hope at the Senate level, if there will be any changes. One can certainly hope that we do have some good senators, but they're not in the majority, I don't think. And so again, you can contact Life Canada. We do have a lot of information on our site at lifecanada.org. And there's a lot of the information that I just was talking about is there under our articles. Other than that, really all we can do is pray. And I think, one of the things that we do at Life Canada is we run something called the Dying Healed program. And that is a very in-depth course. It's a little mini course. It's about 3 days long that we do. And it really gives people a very solid understanding of the end of life issues. And it's been having great success across Canada. We run it in about 25 communities and growing. We are offering the Dying Healed program March. It's the 3 Mondays in March. So it's starting, I think, the 8th, 22nd. No, I'm getting it mixed up. 8th, 15th, and 22nd, I think, in March. And it trains people to be well-versed in these issues, to understand them with intelligence and depth, and to feel confident in actually going and spending time with someone who is, elderly, alone, lonely. Loneliness is a very big issue, disabled. Excuse me. So that's something that people can do and feel like they're contributing.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So one-on-one, one of the things that we realized when the legislation was passed in 2016 is that it wasn't going to help if we stood outside with placards. What we really needed to do, not to disparage that, because that's one thing that we need to be doing. But the other thing we need to be doing is really being one-on-one and educating people. The laws might be there, but we don't have to abide by those laws. If you have an educated population, eventually those laws will change. So really to work one-on-one, to educate people, small groups, and then have those people going out and being confident in going and volunteering. Now, of course, with COVID, much of the volunteer opportunities are gone, but there are other ways of reaching out, and we've helped people do that through Zoom calls, through telephone calls, through even just writing cards, being pen pals. So there's different ways of reaching out to people who are vulnerable and helping them to understand the meaning and purpose of their lives, that their lives have meaning and great purpose. And we need them. We need them as much as they need us.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well said.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Rod, did you have anything? Well, why don't you first just give that website, the web address again, so that we can.
Sure. Yes. So it's just www.lifecanada.org, O-R-G.
.org.
And
okay.
if you go under our articles, you'll see that. And if you go under our events, we'll be getting that up in the next few days.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And, Rod, did you have any thoughts? And before we wrap up,
Natalie, we appreciate what you're doing in your organization and all the pro-life organizations out there. I am, as you know, a member of the Smithers in District,
Yes.
Bulkley Valley Pro-Life Society here, and so it's a long haul. We just have to keep pushing on these things. They're so important. We can't let up. So thank you for your work, and
You're most
all the
welcome.
best in this troubled times where it is very difficult to do some of the things that need to be done right now.
Yes.
So thank you for persevering
Yes.
under those constraints.
Yes. I'll say this. I was chatting with a lady yesterday, and she said this to me. She said, God has us here in this time, for a reason. He's specifically chosen us to be alive right now, and so that's some consolation that we're here, and we have this great task at hand of helping our fellow citizens and helping them to see the value of their lives.
Yeah, very
So,
good.
that's right.
yeah. Thank you for your work too. A great supporter of the CHP.
Well, it's a privilege to do what we do, and we have to keep on going. All of us that have life, family, and freedom at the core of our thoughts, we have to keep pressing that issue, because we're living in a culture that is contrary to those concepts.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Well, we know that there is much talk about, standing up for life against a disease, but we also have to remind our fellow citizens that we've got to stand up for life against the lax and problematic laws of our country. And let's do that as we reach out to our senators. Again, it's lifecanada.org, where you can get some more information and take action. Contact our senators, plead with them to have a conscience and to improve or perhaps even strike down Bill C-7, which is going to cause so many problems for our doctors and for those who are in a vulnerable situation and thinking about ending their lives. So thank you again for listening, watching, and we hope you'll join us again next week for another edition of CHP Talks.